Good evening and welcome to the joint meeting between the Select Board and the Finance Committee on January 25th at 6 p.m. as we continue our budget discussions with department heads throughout the town. We have several department heads coming up this evening, and we will do some public input, member updates. We will approve our previous meeting minutes, and we will adjourn. So without further ado, our first department is Mr. Alvarez with our library budget request. How are you?
Good, thank you. So thank you for being with me. So the next fiscal year, the primary ask is for an increase in hours. So this year, they have a new team library position created at 30 hours per week.
Page 142, excuse me. I did want to mention, if we do have any viewers, this budget book is available online in PDF version. If you want to follow along, page 142 is the library request. Thank you.
Sure. So this year we did create a new team librarian position at 30 hours per week. That would have that was budget neutral for this fiscal year. But for next fiscal year, we're asking to increase those 30 hours to 37 and a half. We're asking for that because mainly it's what we need for the position, the new library, to increase the number of teams coming to the library. Every day after school, they're right there. They walk up from middle school. And so we do have a new team librarian in place. Her name is Catherine. She started last week and she has started going, and we did make it clear to her that right now it's 30 hours, it's a possibility of increasing those hours to 37 and a half, and she's totally fine with that. The other position we're looking to increase hours for is a library tech position. So currently we have 4 library techs on staff, and they're each, 3 of them are at 19 hours, and 1 of them is at 12. So previously we did have a library tech position that was more than 20 hours, and that was a benefited position, but that person didn't want to do it, and we didn't want to use her, so we decreased her hours, but we would like to gain those hours back and benefit the position back. So for next year, we're asking for an additional 11 hours for that position. And
So, Sam, was that position ever taken off the books or off the rolls, or is it kind of still, is it vacant?
The person's still there, they just reduced their hours.
Right, they reduced their hours.
So you would still have 4 people. You know, just take one of them and increase them.
Okay, so the one, well, you have 3 at 19 and 1 at 12. Is the 1 at 12 staying at 12, or we will?
Yeah, she's the one that reduced.
And one of the 19.
That's right.
Oh, sorry. On one of the 19 to move up, we're looking for new.
Right, looking to increase one of the 19 to 30 hours.
Thank you.
And finally, we looking to create a 6-hour library assistant position. Primarily, it has to do with covering the desk. This person could also help out in the team room. Right now, especially given the current atmosphere with COVID, we're all helping out where we can, but really an extra person on deck for what we know. So that would be a total difference of about 51,000. But for regular expenses such as town materials and other items like that that we normally ask for an increase for, we're actually asking for a decrease. And the difference would be covered by library trustees have agreed to kick in about $15,000 from their accounts. We usually get about $14,000 to $15,000 from the friends of the library to cover things like museum passes, which also apply to our yearly bar requirement for the state to get certified. So in reality, I am asking for an increase in payroll, but it's not really any different from what I normally ask for normal step increases.
You said that the increase, you normally would ask for an increase in materials. I think you didn't say time and material, just said just normal materials.
Yeah, materials, Regular expenses, materials, fees, databases, other expenses that we usually ask for increases for things like supplies, programming.
So those are all increasing,
No,
but you're not asking for us to, or not getting it funded by the
right,
trustees.
it's going to be funded by state trustees. Or funds.
Is that something we're looking at continuing? It's a 1 year type of thing this year?
So looking forward into the future, a lot of my staff, they really just wanted to make it through to the new library. So a lot of them will be retiring coming up. So I obviously would like to hire new people, but then it'd be a much lower staff. A lot of my staff are,
Yeah, I wasn't talking about the personnel side, I was just talking about the supply materials.
And that would also continue as far as supplies and materials.
It does.
The trustees have agreed to you.
Oh, wow, good.
And also the finance stuff.
Okay, I don't want to put it around.
So what you're asking is, if friends or the trustees are going to increase to $50,000, it's going to offset this year. You're asking if that's going to be sustainable?
Well, it's not,
All right, I'm asking that.
yeah, it won't be Apple. It's not gonna be Apple. It actually, it only comes out to about eight. A little over 8,000.
Gary, can I talk?
Sure.
Mark Rambacher, one of the trustees. So we've actually been working with the finance department to figure out what a sustainable budget is that we can put in from trust funds every year. 15,000 was very sustainable from that perspective. We were looking at potentially also contributing some to like a capital fund for the library as well to do capital improvements over time so that we could put the 15,000 towards materials plus some other for, improvements to the library without coming back to the town and asking for it. So we believe the 15,000 is sustainable, but we haven't finalized that with the finance department.
Thank you.
Okay, so that number is 15, not 50.
Right.
Okay.
I knew that just from the budget book that it wasn't, it's not apples to apples.
Thanks, Mike.
So Mark, besides the trust funds, we're using gifts, we're using grants, and we're using money from friends. Is that also sustainable?
So the grants is a 2-year thing that we have. So I don't know that will be going.
State aid is every year.
The state aid is every year.
Right.
The friends, we can't promise that it's every year, but it's been fairly consistent in the past. One of the problems with presenting the library budget is we have all of these sources of income that don't end up reflecting in the overall library thing. So we're trying to reflect them now. The friends money has been fairly stable. The state aid is pretty stable. The grant is a 2-year thing, and that was like 25,000 for 2 years, but it's not, I think that's being used for not necessarily for like operational things going forward. It's for like programming and things that it's for an uptick of something that we'll have. So
That's tricky. I mean, it's really a good faith as far as looking at it from a budgetary standpoint. It's hard to count on that money if we're looking at it in our budget. It's a handshake, basically. We're talking about the friends and things like that. So that's it's great to have that organization contributing to that for sure. Any other questions, Steve?
No, the sustainability of it, right?
Yeah.
Great detail. Yeah.
So as far as the sustainability of the trust, we would like to get an MOU with the town on how we'd like it going forward. So we don't sit here and negotiate, how much we're paying in trust funds every year, and it's just kind of set. But it's been between COVID and budget season, getting that in the works is just a time constraint.
Yeah, Mark, we need to add, I'll put on my trust fund commissioner hat for a sec, we'll get an agenda for one of those meetings too. I know you work a lot with Sean, but we can kind of go through the, come out of the library development, figure out.
Yeah.
what makes sense on the part.
Yeah, we'd love to sit down and do that.
Any other members, the boards, we have Matthew, and like Matthew, Greg, out there. They want any questions? Okay. All right, so I just want to, just to recap, because there are several shifts here. We have one of our currently not benefit eligible positions moving into the benefit category for 30 hours from 19. We are looking to get a 6-hour library assistant. That would be like an intern type transfer, or is that more of a?
So library assistant is a grade 3 step.
Okay. And then, let's see,
And increase the hours for the YA library.
from 12.
No, from 30 to 37.
Oh, excuse me, 30 to 37, which is already done. Okay. Thank you.
So the net would be that we took somebody off with benefit eligible and we bumped a different person up so that they would be benefit eligible and they've expressed interest in the benefits.
We already had the benefit position, it's just the person that was in that position gave it up. So, another benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think a couple budget cycles ago, when we were still in the other building. There was discussion of some of this happening then. And we weren't sure what it was going to look like when you moved over. So it sounds like that, and plus somebody, obviously, a couple other hours here and trying to get. Okay, thank you. I know it's tough trying to figure it out this quick because it's only been open for half a year, right? Any other questions?
How's everything going in the building?
Better, it's going on. It's going good.
Getting comfortable in it?
Yeah, again, more and staff. More games.
No leaky roofs or?
What about operationally, Sam, as far as expenses, heat, can't do air conditioning right now, but cleaning, that kind of thing?
So we're still working on that for as far as cleaning and I have never seen like a new building, so
Electricity, any of that?
I heard it's pretty high. Electricity. There's electric heat there.
big pump. So we're going to install those solar panels.
So we have a $110,000 earmark from the state to put solar panels on the roof. We put it out to bid and had some issues with the bid. So we're looking to put it out again in the next week or so to get the solar panels out. The problem with the bid was the way it's worked is it's an earmark. So we had to spend the money by June 30th or potentially lose it. So we put in to the bid that they had to have it complete by June 30th, and no one can do that because of supply chain issues. So we went back and talked to the state about how to put it out to bid so that we didn't have this issue. So we're in the process of doing that now. The solar panels, it's going to cost more than $110,000, but we're expecting the bump we get from the LEED certification to cover the rest of the money, or the excess money. We said we'd raise $1 million towards the project, and we've exceeded that. So we have the funds available to cover beyond what the state earmark is. We're just making sure we can get everything done for the earmark right now. So,
And the certification from the state gets us how much extra?
so the LEED certification gets us a 2% bump on our grant. With the solar panels, we're expecting we can go from LEED to LEED Silver, which will get us another 0.5%. So I believe the 2% is around $110,000, and the extra half will be like another 50 grand. So we can't, as soon as we have a contractor signed on to put the solar panels on, we can go we're waiting for that to get the LEED grant. The panels don't have to be installed. We just have to have the contract in hand that says we're going to put them on, and then we can go for the LEED Silver. So as soon as that is in the works, we will be applying for the grant. We already have the LEED. We're just trying to bump it up a level.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Moving along, next up will be Ed Mullen with the Land Use Department and Building Division. 106. Awesome. Whenever you're situated.
Good evening, everybody. Ed Mullins, Littleton Building Commissioner. Thank you for having me. Little different proposal, I think, because one, we had proposed a reorg of the building department to combine all the land use departments. So in that, we're trying to work towards a land use budget, not a building department budget. So the division has myself, Maren Tuhill, and Amy Green will be presenting our own division budgets, as well as talking about next steps in combining all of us to be under one. We're under one umbrella, but trying to figure out how to do this presentation moving forward for next year or whatever that might entail.
Could potentially be other one.
Correct. And maybe one person different.
Yeah.
Tell me where you'd like me to start. You want to start about how we came up with the reorg idea? Do you want to start with just numbers? Where are we?
That's probably good background, because that kind of leads into what some of the requests, so sure, the reorganization.
So February last year, I did a presentation in front of the select board on the 22nd, and we proposed doing a reorg of all the departments upstairs in the land use. Sorry, I can't do both. In that, we proposed creating the land use and buildings department, combining our forces so that we can become more efficient. When I arrived in Littleton as the commissioner, the departments were siloed. Everybody worked independently of each other. There was an administrative assistant for the building department and the Board of Health as a shared position. Planning and conservation did their own phone answering, their own minutes, their own everything. And conversations held between the departments were only if you initiated or tried to create communication. Under this setup, where you have a director of land use communication and the assistant director of land use, it's more fluid. We're focused more on economic development as well as streamlining the permitting process. Everybody that comes in is treated equally and the same. There's no politics involved in an application anymore. It comes in, it's treated as it's a faceless application, and it's judged the same. In that presentation, I'm just going to pull it up.
This is what was discussed, approved at last June's town meeting, is that?
Yeah, at regular annual town meeting, it was approved. It was approved on the consent agenda, June 21st, I believe. I have handouts if people want them. I know people that are on, you can't see them.
Oh, that you just talked, this is the reorg.
This is the reorg piece, yeah. And in that reorg, we also proposed a fee increase for permits. That has proved beneficial. It's been a significant revenue increase for the building department. We haven't finished the fiscal year, but in the calendar year, we're up over $200,000 more. So it has been significant.
This is more in line with other communities. Is that?
Yeah, so in the proposal, we're equal or we're average with the surrounding communities. The average was 1250. We went to 13 instead of having the decimal to do the math. So, but with this new structure, it modernizes the department. It provides professional support services for each division manager, more opportunity to address the needs and priorities of the town. It assures all statutory requirements are being met, and the fees that we set, like I just said, are on par. So that was.
And that's the briefing you gave last year.
It is, and then I gave an update this past November with the select board as well. So, in the reorg, we have completed the job description and appointment of Janet Fairchild to move from administrative assistant to office manager. for the land use department. Was 19 applicants for the position, and she held the position as just administrative assistant, and she rose to the top through that process. And has been doing a wonderful job. We're looking forward to, the next step would be to end our contract with the Selbrd Associated Boards of Health at the end of the fiscal year. Currently, we get 12 to 16 hours roughly from them in sanitation services, a few extra hours in nursing services, and restaurant inspections. We're looking to move into having our own health agent. With our own health agent, we have 40 hours of service for sanitary and housing code and other inspections that are required in restaurants. We're also proposing a part-time or per diem nursing service or nurse to be hired on staff. The most recent job description is circulated again around town hall between APA, Joe Layton, and EHS director and human resources office. So we should be coming up with a final draft that has the select board and the board of health for both of their meetings. We also have the job descriptions for the the director of land use and buildings, the assistant director of land use and buildings, to be reviewed by HR. And next steps on that, hopefully we can get those in front of the select board soon for review.
Okay, so just for clarity, for this budget cycle, what are the actual requests, personnel requests with this review?
So within this review, the first request is obviously funding the position for the health agent. There's more discussion on that position to be had with the Board of Health and with the Select Board. Within the division, in the building division, the proposal is to do an increase of 4.1% for the local building inspector. A little bit of good news, our electrical inspector, who is benefit eligible position, he also works the other half of his day in the town of Acton. He has a different fee structure and a different payment schedule. They are now looking to work with the town and other than contacting our HR departments over there to co-op the position. So his benefits will not be shared. So it's a slight decrease in benefit costs for the town.
As you mentioned, hiring a part-time nurse with that budget.
So that budget line, we had talked about it. It was brought up at the last Board of Health meeting, and we again discussed it last night at the select board meeting. I'm not sure what it is. It's not in the.
So it's not, this is specific to obviously the pandemic. This was a need that was
Correct.
looks like something that presented itself. It makes sense to have at least a part-time position. Those types of.
Right. And talking to the director of the EHS, Liz believes that there's potential to find somebody within their organization, somebody they're in contact with to assist us with that. So it's in process.
So it's not in this budget, it's not an ask right now, but it's potentially a phase 2, or it might come in as another draft.
Yeah, you will see on the process. Yeah, it's going to become a priority in discussions with the Board of Health, in discussions with the town administrator's office, health and human services, and HR. It's going to need to be a priority.
So I just noticed in your other expenditure line for the health department, up in the narrative, there's 10,000 including for nurses. And Fincom. Nursing services line, $10,000 budget is there. nursing services. With 20 grand in it to nursing already.
I guess that's the question. What is, without a position,
Currently, we
those services are being contracted out? Are we currently contracting nurses
provided by the show. Yeah,
specific? But prior to the pandemic, were we doing it?
same, yes.
We were, okay.
We-
That
We've
was-
always used them for this.
Okay. So it's just, it makes sense. Obviously, the likelihood of finding an engineer / nurse is not a possibility. So you look, that's where it is.
Right.
I'm just thinking timeline, with the health agents, is Neshoba aware of what our intentions are?
Absolutely. Not only they're aware, at the last Board of Health meeting, if you tuned in to the last update that Mike Selbrd gives, he went to the quarterly meeting at the show associated with the health. And their update is pretty dire, or at least the update that Mike Selbrd gave us about the show's longevity and our ability to continue to serve. He said that, I took some notes because we watched it for sure. The level of detail in their budgeting, in Mr. Zeldin's opinion, is sparse. He said that the only thing that he thinks keeps them afloat is their nursing services, because outside of the 16 communities they serve, they contract with several other communities just for the nursing services, which seems, because they're still running in a negative, but they're not having to tap all of their reserve fund at this point.
So instead of going out and getting our own nurse, still contract with Neshoba for nursing service?
It sounds like that is a possibility. But when I say that, every time we talk to them about a la carte services, we're told it's not available. So,
Well, there are other services available, and it's about that, honest dimensions, like the
Sure.
kind of service. But and speaking with Kevin Baker, the chair, the current chair, of the he's less inclined to say that they're against the other card services. If we got to a point where we need to extend them for 6 months or extend them for 12 months, their next meeting is next month, and that's a possibility. We can have that conversation. So, hey, listen, we're still getting our act together here. Is there any chance you can stay on for 6 months? So that conversation can be, it has to be said frankly and 100% be out there and basically get a yes or no out of it. I don't think that conversation's been had, Steve, so.
Because one of the things, and I got a really nice conversation there yesterday in his office. The thing that concerns me the most is trying to hire that agent position. June is gonna be here before we know it.
Agreed.
And if that person's not on staff, a couple of months at least before that, we're gonna wind up in the same situation we wound up in, no offense, on down the treasurer's office and
HR. Yeah.
I mean, you want something here that's gonna overlap with June for a little while, so we can learn both.
in saying that, and I agree that we do want to try to overlap, I believe we can get it done. I also know that in Littleton, we have a retired health director who was offered to assist and train, she would not make the deadline. And in June, July 1, then we have that. There's also other contract services available for that training. I would love for the overlap to occur. I think Jim is a valuable resource just with his institutional knowledge of the town of Littleton. I think if we continue on with Michelle Associates Board of Health, it impedes the progress we're trying to make in the land use and buildings department for continuity of services, meeting our statutory obligations. So really hoping that we can get to help it posted and hired sooner rather than later. It is a priority in our department. I have to say, it's probably 90% of what I work on, trying to just go through the draft job description with those that I need to get approval from the then get posted.
Has the Board of Health sat down with the people in the show, but not Jim, but Jim's boss? Just say that they're displeased with the amount of level of services that we got?
I don't know. I know that Mike Sullivan went to the quarterly meeting. I don't know if there was anybody else there. I believe, Mara, you can help me out on this one. Isn't Jim his boss?
Jim is the director.
Jim is the director.
Yeah.
But they have a board, correct?
They do.
Correct.
If I may, Mr. Chair, historically, what have we paid Neshoba annually for their services? And what was that for someone?
48 to 52,000.
You're talking all in different.
Yeah, of course.
So the
The
show is
end of the
26, nursing is 10. Not for mental health, but that's for someone else.
Right, well, then we do a restaurant inspection as well.
But that's part of the show. That's 26. So it's 26 and 10 for nursing. It's-
Health. Is that just board health?
The show is- so it's-
30 for.
You're gonna pay
I'm paying
135.
193.
Also, I wish we could go off this position. Hold them on.
Mr. Chairman, either Mr. Chairman, I might just chime in. Thank you. When the town affirmatively voted this, all of our boards, Fincom, Selectmen, Select Board, and Board of Health last year with the other boards creating a land use department, we understood there was a transition period. I think the year ensuing is just underscored a couple of points, I would think. One is that the public health component, independent of the sanitation component, is something we need to have in-house. So that dialogue with the Board of Health, which is ongoing, which I believe we're scheduled to have our next conversation with the Board of Health members for our February 7th meeting, will help shape that. But independent of that, the sanitation part of it is long established and overdue. Our size of a town and the amount of activity has justified that. But beyond that, the most troubling thing, and Ed would not really be in a position to speak to this, and frankly, no one else would right now either, is multiple attempts by Board of Health members and other town officials to get those numbers out of Neshoba of what's being paid. I'm not talking about what the town pays them, but what's paid by individuals who are buying permits, independent it doesn't go through the town finances. We have not been able to get from them, to my knowledge, and if someone corrects me, I would welcome that information. They will not share that information. Once upon a time, or they have not shared that information. Once upon a time, we used to routinely, the community used to get reports from the Neshoba Allied Board of Health. Back when Peter Casanari was Littleton's representative to that and chairman of the board, and Walter Murphy from Littleton was the director there. And, there was an active participation of the community. Something's changed there so that we don't even know how much they're collecting from Littleton applicants to fund their operations, and it makes it very difficult for us. And and Ed's in a tough spot here, and everyone else he's working collaboratively with to come up with just that piece of it, which is of course crucially important. If we recover that money with the sanitation piece, that's of course how we're going to fund the great majority of this, and I'll leave it at that, but I think that's an important point to be injected here. If some of this looks fuzzy, it's not because of lack of effort or precision on the part of Littleton officials. It's just it's part of the problem we have with Neshoba.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I wasn't really, as far as the positions go, that need has been addressed, I know, to your board. But from the financial piece, I guess I'm not concerned. It's just that it's probably going to be a little bit more than we think if we're going to try to get this position in here and run services. I just want to make sure that we're capturing that.
Yeah.
it might make sense to keep Neshoba on a year. And I know that but that's gonna cost a ton of money, but at the end of the day, it might make sense. You bring this person in, maybe they come in and, maybe we have trouble finding somebody. Maybe they
I
come
just
in-
worry that that's frankly what setting us up for, and I hope that, we should explore other options,
Yeah, outside of Neshoba.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the simple fact that I just cited here, and again, I wait for somebody to correct me if I'm wrong, they have not answered the question. How much are you collecting from Littleton sanitation permits annually? Will not give those figures. Either they don't have them or they won't share them. And either one of those answers is troubling to me. I think, you prudently are asking the right questions, and I just think we should cautiously and conservatively budget for this with the anticipation that it become in-house sooner rather than later, hopefully within this next fiscal year. But once we recover those funds through the town rather through an outside agency, I'm guessing the news is going to be better than we think.
And I look at these departments that have fees attached to them. And I look at the fees as kind of great. That the real concern should be the services to the town. And if we're not getting the service that we want out of the shoulder, then yeah, the decision to bring it in-house is a lot easier. And if the fees follow, great. But I'm not looking to say, we're gonna make this much in fees, so let's, make sure that we have the expenses up there to cover it. I mean, it's great that potentially could, but I'm more concerned with the services to the town. The shoulder's not giving us what we need, then we need to take another step back and take a look at. That leads into my other concerns. We're gonna run out of time. And we have to make sure, sooner than later, number one, will the shoulder extend this for 3 months or 6 months?
Or we go outside of the contract service.
Or we try and find something else until we find this right person.
So I'm with you. I mean, like I said, I did this presentation to the board in February. We got voted at town meeting in June. And then we had the HR issues that we had, right? We went through an HR manager, now an HR department, director. It's been what has stalled us. I mean, it's not me trying, I have driven this.
Right.
I feel like I'm beating my head against the concrete wall when I'm talking about this because it's important. I'm passionate about it and I want to make sure we get it done. It's something that I promised at town meeting that we would do when I asked for the vote. So I don't want to give up on it. And I mean, I certainly understand having a backup, but I don't want to give up on what, was voted at town meeting. I think it's important that we keep driving this forward. We'll know once we post that position, the sooner we can get it created and posted, the sooner we can see what comes in for applications.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt. The other thing too is I believe that the Board of Health already voted to end our contract with Neshoba Board of Health on a certain. So I don't think that extending that contract is an option right now, based on the last vote. I think it was like last month they voted. In that contract, right?
Yeah, they could ask.
Yeah, but if that's what we're gonna look at, then we need to go back to the Board of Health and say, let's start talking
Unring the
about
bell.
budgets. We gotta unring the bell.
Okay.
So,
I say we're probably not on the street with this job end of February, early March. We're gonna run out of time.
I would.
And I'm with you, Steve. It is about the services. We lose sight of that. We walked this road with ALS, right? When we brought it on. It wasn't going to pay for itself out of the gate. It never will. But it is a service that the town felt it was important to them. And I think this one, you made a case. It's not just septic anymore. There's so much more to it. And it's a component. So thank you. Any other questions regarding that or anything else that you brought forward? The budget in general, the reorg, I know
It's a lot we're trying to accomplish and I appreciate everybody's time. I'm sorry if I do it seems like I'm getting a little passionate about it, but it's important. It's important to the town and, I care about how people are served in this town. And that's an important piece of the services we provide on the venues. I have a lot of respect for Jim Durfee as a health agent, and when I proposed this, he was the first one I went to and said, "We would love to have you as our." When is something we talked about. If you have any other questions, or if you want to go through any budget lines, any help I can get moving this forward.
Okay, let me just say one comment, the replacement for the initial Board of Health, the new Board of Health agent is in the, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, it's a bunch of, for a position, okay.
Any other questions on this? I know you've got 3 team members here going through some of the other pieces. Anything significant else you want to add?
We did relinquish our revolving fund. It's gone to the general fund. I'm not sure, Cheryl was here at the time, and we were looking at it, and money wasn't going in the way it was before I arrived. Cheryl and I were both fairly new, we weren't sure what it was. I think originally it was intended to pay the plumbing and electrical inspectors out of the revolving fund. With the way the permit fees are set up now and increasing revenue, it just makes sense to get rid of the revolving fund. It was an accounting nightmare, so.
Any question?
I'm sorry. Talk a little about the structure of the land use department, so director, assistant director.
Sure. So the director of land use and the assistant director, currently the way it's established and the way it's open to set it up is that I would be the director of land use, Mara Doolittle, the town planner, would be the assistant director. But in those job descriptions, when we drafted, Mara and I took a lot of time into making sure that either or could be in that role. So should one person retire or leave or take another position, that the other person could either move up into that position or the town could look. It wouldn't have to be a building commissioner. It would have to be the land use director. It could be a town planner. So either way, we wanted to make sure that it was could be covered, the basis could be covered, and it wasn't. You don't have to be the planner to be in it. You can be either. Gives us some flexibility in the structure. As the director, and the assistant director, we oversee the division. So we have the planning division, administrative support, the building division, health division, and conservation division. And just in going through this, I can tell you that I enjoy our office atmosphere. The cohesiveness that we've developed in just creating this org chart has been significant. And the fact that our office manager now answers the phone for 5 departments instead of 2 has helped out our town planner and our conservation agent significantly. So.
And these new positions are probably also integrated with HR. That's
correct. The assistant conservation agent was a position that was posted. I'm sorry, not posted. It was budgeted for and then cut due to COVID. It's a part-time position. I don't think he's going to speak to it, Chief, before you as well, but in speaking to Amy, should we bring on the assistant conservation? Currently, Amy works 25 hours a week. She would gladly move to 20 hours a week and have the assistant working the other 20 hours a week. So there's a 5-hour-a-week benefit there. Not sure how she's going to do it. It's a lot of work that she gets done. The other new position that we're looking to have created in the job description has been sent over to HR is the assistant town planner. We talked about economic development before. My job description carries, requirements to work towards economic development. The assistant town planner or the town planner. Right now, we all come into our office. Whoever gets the call seems to run with the ball. I know a lot of times the call comes into the administration's office and Anthony or Joe are running with the ball and they'll come over on our side of the wall. We're collaborating on how do we move forward.
Anyone online have anything? Good to go? All right.
Talk a little bit about the relocation of our office.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, just for awareness of people, I know there is conversations about what the heck's happening in Shattuck Street.
Right, so just so if people are watching, 'cause I know some people are tuned into this portion.
Sure.
People that are in the fiscal realm. That we're looking to relocate into the lower level of the vacated library. For a lot of reasons. One being, we need a little bit more elbow room. And two, it has a single service door to the outside, so we open earlier than any other department in town. And instead of having to unlock all of town hall, at 7 a.m. when we open, we have a single door that people can come in. We have ADA compliant bathrooms right there. So we're looking to do that in the cleanliness, between the job sites we visit and the contractors that come in. It'd be nice that instead of having mud going up 3 flights of stairs and through the hallway, that it's contained in that location. In that relocation, we're trying to do it at minimal cost, just to make people aware, we're gonna paint this space ourselves. We're gonna move the office furniture that we currently have down to the lower level. The Light and Water Department has offered their cubicles because they're gonna be doing a renovation in their office. 20 years overdue. The library trustees, Mark Rambarker, has told me that they had some old carpet tiles to replace and repair what was there. He showed me we had more than enough to make the carpet repair. So, cost wise, we're thinking 10 to 15,000 just in electrical and IT upgrades. But other than that, that's the only cost we're looking to incur down the road just to make these work.
Can you take us that whole first floor? Basement floor?
Not the whole, but the Cooper room will stay a meeting room. That will always, in our presentation, we said that we did that just in that one room, including the office of the veterans agent currently is in. But not the meeting room on the side. And the break room, obviously, we're happy to share with anybody with the town employee.
Great. Amy Green? Oh, there you are. Amy's zooming in with the Land Use Conservation Division.
Yeah, good evening.
Hi.
Sorry, I couldn't be there. I wasn't entirely sure what you wanted me to cover, so I will just start with the easiest piece of it. And we're on page 79, or 78, I believe, is the office budget request for conservation is $4,350. That is an increase over last year, primarily due to the fact that we now have a line item to deal with tree removal. Put in 2,500. The last tree was 2,100. I assume there might be a little bit of an increase there. So that is just one tree. Sometimes we go years without having to pay for someone, and sometimes the tree is right next to a house. So highway can't take it down themselves and needs to go out. So that's just basically a placeholder for that. And frankly, the rest of that is fairly straightforward.
Yeah, your budget looked pretty pretty standard from prior years, so I didn't really have any questions. But if somebody else has any, please go ahead. Anyone online? All right. Well, I think that's it. That was pretty painless. So
Works for me. Thank you very much.
thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
You might have just caught up on time. Just like
Come on now.
all right, Maren. Land Use Planning Division, Zoning and Appeals. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Great.
So I think this is probably about my 26th year presenting a budget for my board of my department.
Page 83 for the
So
following one.
it's somewhere in there. So thanks to Ed for going through the reorganization discussion. Request for the planning department is assistant town planner only, and they can do wonderful things, we can keep up with some of the planning work that we're trying to accomplish. Like Amy, I'm not sure how much you'd like to go over, but happy to respond.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, all the members that don't get to see or talk to the budgets. I realize there's not a lot of discussion sometimes with a lot of departments. The budgets are pretty self-explanatory, don't change much, but as a whole, I know your departments there's a big change potentially coming, so we just gotta, and you pretty much gave that whole presentation yourself, so I didn't expect to be much from you. But does anybody have any questions regarding the specific budgets being discussed? No? Anyone online? No? It's good.
So the ask is just the assistant town planner, a salary of 63 grand.
And qualifications.
Former treasurer.
If we could attract, there's so many different avenues that we could take this. If we could track somebody with some GIS experience, we would certainly use that to help with mapping and visualization of some of the work that we're trying to do. If we can attract somebody with more of a housing background, then I would steer that person towards, some of the housing work that we're trying to do. It's if we can attract somebody with more of a development bent, then and over more of the permitting process. A lot of it depends on who we can attract.
There'd be some cross training out of that as well.
Absolutely.
No, so I just to support what Marin's asked for the assistant town planner. When I came on, I was the building commissioner. I was the working commissioner. I was out in the field every day doing inspections. We were able to bring in a local inspector, Mike Kenny, who's been a godsend for our office. And then seeing that benefit that I've been able to, I tell them every day how wonderful it is. I know they get jealous, Amy and Marin both, but I'm like, I'm trying. I really want to get you there because they do so much heavy lifting in the office. And, I try to help, we discuss a lot of things, but it's their wheelhouse. And I want to make sure that they get the support and the help that they desperately need. I know when the discussion last night, the select board meeting, the MBTA community requirements, 550 things becoming online. There's a lot of effort going on upstairs, and we want to make sure we're prepared.
Thank you. Is there a one pager that pulls these together so you can see the impact? Because I'm trying to add up all the pages differently, and it looks like it's going up by over 300K, but maybe I'm not adding it right now.
That's probably accurate.
That's an accurate estimation.
Yeah. I'm already creating a new position.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to do on my phone, yeah.
Which is another reason to have this all in one umbrella.
Right.
Right. And I've also asked Sean, I know, coming into our Saturday event, maybe to have it a one sheet, so it's a little bit more easier to see exactly what
All
the asks are all in front of us. And I know Paul had made reference to that the last meeting. So, yeah, it's a big ask, but it's big changes, essentially taking place. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, next up, Nancy, IT.
Yeah, I'm going to take this one.
You are, okay. Sean will be filling in for Nancy, our IT and central communications project. Page 69.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Talking with Nancy, I went through the budget
From a bottom line perspective, still very similar to last year in terms of the total. In fact, like a slight reduction of $371. I do want to kind of highlight some of the line items that are driving the budget, as well as some of the goals that Nancy has going forward that have been really helpful. In earlier in FY 21, friend Tom redid the whole phone system, which has helped to reduce some of the costs in terms of our communications line items. And on top of that, have kind of pushed forward on some new grant opportunities with the community contacts with the state to refresh some of our servers and help with the IT infrastructure. So that's not totally reflected in here, but it's a couple of the good programs that she's working on implementing that have been really helpful. I'm looking through the line items. Staffing is very similar with the COLA and steps. And then in terms of the line item detail on expense, the biggest one of the 393, most of it, not most of it, 103,000 for Unis, which is our ERP, 27,000 for public safety ICMA software, which is pertains to dispatching for police and fire, 9,000 for security, doors and cameras, 12,000 for assessing software, and 160,000 for Thrive, which provides some of our security and office suites, general program stuff. Going forward into 23, I know she's working on a document management system. This will help us kind of preserve some of the records that we have at town hall, so that we have a good legacy filing system for that. I'm trying to think of the other big thing too is with a push for cybersecurity with a lot of the threats that you come across some obviously in the financial office. A lot of them with like payroll fraud and things like that. So one thing that Nancy and Tom contracted out with a company called No4, which sends out phishing kind of scams out there to test you, and it's a really good training tool because a lot of the things that come across are really can be realistic. I got one from a fake check that said, "I need this document right now, put this link on." Probably not. So those are the things that it's really good from a training and security standpoint that they're really focused on, as well as, like I touched on earlier, 56,000 for the server upgrades that's funded through grants. So all in all, level funded, and with some good programs on the horizon to get done. But I'm not an IT guru, but if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to kind of take them down and get answers to you on anything that comes up.
Well, first of all, it's a number in the red, so don't sell yourself short.
I'm
Which
just
is
gonna
very
change
rare.
the
It's very rare in municipal government. So
I can put an end to that one.
training services, what are we looking at?
Nancy's salary,
Okay, that's missing.
her increase, is about 0.15% instead of 1.5%.
Well, there you go. Did you have a Steve? All right.
So instead of 164.
Okay, you're back at an increase.
Sorry.
I was trying to cheat, sorry.
Okay. Still true. It is, yeah, it's, thank you, I expected something different.
She's doing a lot. Center and she was, for the liaison, she sent me a lot of detail of what she's working on. White House is doing a lot now. It's just very important.
And so much work now being done, you know, in the virtual world. This is maintained. This has been great. So,
Yeah, we've been having, units on the cloud and those types of things, so we don't have to have it in-house on our servers for, you know, continuity and security purposes. Is huge money saver, and also, just really, useful for support and backup in case everything crashes, so.
yeah.
But I think good redundancy there.
Yeah, I think we're talking about management system too, like, too, is gonna be potentially, it'll help Diane.
Oh, yeah.
Her, stuff, so that'd be,
Yeah.
I don't want
That's
to
a
challenge.
huge, that leaves a huge project that it's talking about.
So if I may, Mr. Chair. So this is something that the select board has discussed in the past is document preservation. At one point, we were actually talking about having town hall go paperless, which is a big endeavor, but I learned while speaking to other administrators and managers from different communities that other towns have used CPC funds, through historic bucket for preservation. It was basically under the historic preservation. And it qualified under the CPC.
There's
without
nothing
use.
that's good for any instance.
Yeah,
That'd be
exactly.
awesome.
Coming
So,
off the binding right now, and trying to get her and Nancy to get together and start scanning with environment.
right. So, right, like one community, they had done some major renovations to their town hall. When they took all the documents out and before they put them, picked and choose what they were going to put back in, they applied to the CPC for funding under the historic preservation bucket. And they were able to dispose of documents they didn't need, but what they wanted to scan and preserve was paid for with those funds. So that's something we should
Yeah, that's a
great
consider.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because it is, I mean, it's super expensive to do, but it's huge that, you always get asked for the thing like from, 10 to 15 years ago, and then hopefully it's there and
Right.
gone, be kind of, or PM'd up, so I think that's awesome. I didn't know you could do that. So that's
Yeah,
great.
and there's companies that come in and can help you organize and figure out what sort of system to use or how to manage that whole, because it is quite an undertaking.
Yeah.
So that's just something to keep in mind.
Nice.
And that historic bucket of CPC, it's not easy to find projects, if you will, that
Right.
that qualification.
Any questions for Sean? All right. Thank you for standing in once again.
Thanks, guys.
And how's our audio? I know it is. Greg and Paul, it's a little junky right now. So I got a text saying it's.
It's just a little muffled. It's not,
These aren't nothing. Yeah. Okay.
Mostly fine on my end.
All right. Should we hear you? Next up is Liz Kreniak with our EHS COA health Neshoba updates and a bunch of discussion. We have Liz.
Hi there. Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Okay, since I can't be there in person, I was hoping I could do some slides. And Judy, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me.
It's 126.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, it's nice.
Great, thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. So my apologies for not being able to be there tonight. For anyone who does not know me or hasn't had a chance to meet me, I'm Liz Tridiak. I'm the Director of Elder and Human Services. I might have shared a little too much information throughout this presentation, but I'll try to be quick. I've been home for a week and a half and had some time on my hands. So the EHS budget is one of the smaller budgets in town in Littleton's overall financial picture. Despite our small slice of the pie here, I like to think that we have a pretty huge impact on the residents that we serve, which is 39% of our senior residents and 1,000 unduplicated residents this past year. It's pretty difficult to quantify anything in human services or social services or just as a service organization in general. Putting what we do in our services into numbers and dollar figures can be pretty challenging. And I know I see Alicia was in the back of the room, and I'm sure we've had this discussion, how difficult it is to put our value into figures and numbers. But 2 select board meetings ago, I think it was, when I was there and we were celebrating outreach worker Amy DeMichael and her outstanding work, I mentioned that how a lot of what we do in our department kind of goes under the radar due to confidentiality and privacy. So some folks may not know exactly what it is that we do in our department. So here's a listing of our current activities, and you might have to pull out your magnifying glass to read this, but I did just want to do an overall snapshot of the breadth and the width of the services and social engagement opportunities that we provide. The EHS budget overall is very lean. Our expenses outside of salaries for the past several years has been around only $20,000 annually, with 50% of that cost being our van dispatching service, which is called Crosstown Connect. This year, we have 2 new requests for the fiscal year 23 budget that will allow us to keep up with the rising demand without overburdening our current staff. One of these requests is a staffing request, and one is an expense transfer from the Board of Health to Elder and Human Services. But first, I'd like to start with the staffing request. So this past calendar year, 65% of our overall focus based on demand was outreach services. And examining the demographics of our incoming requests for assistance, we found that just over 28% of our assistance requests came from folks who are under the age of 60, which is our human services aspect of our department. And looking back historically since 2015, the number of requests for assistance for people under 60 has increased 209%. This is when we started to realize that we are staffed and funded as if we were solely a senior center and solely elder services, and not also human services as well for all ages in town. Given the steady increase in the need in the community documented over the past 6 years, a second outreach worker is needed to continue providing high quality social service assistance to residents. Our outreach department is the gateway for those in need to obtain services, and we operate under a no wrong door policy. So you can come to us with any type of question, even if it's totally unrelated to social services, we'll point you in the right direction. And we do that for about 350 plus residents per month. Our total outreach department contacts for fiscal year 21 was nearly 5,000 points of contact. And as the over 60 population rises, the numbers of residents seeking outreach assistance is also rising. The number of fuel assistance applications, SNAP food stamp applications, SMOC benefits applications, these things that are completed are taking more and more time and becoming more complex for the individuals in town who are low income or struggle to do these things on their own. Something like a mass health application for health insurance is 34 pages in itself without even looking at the additional paperwork that you need to provide for something like that. The outreach coordinator focuses on reaching vulnerable populations, which is low-income folks, people with mental health concerns, recent hospital discharges, those with dementia, and those without family and social supports. While our assistant director manages transportation program, the rental assistance programs, the senior tax work-off program. She creates innovative programming for social engagement. She assists with grants, assists with administrative tasks, and we're no longer able to overflow the additional outreach cases onto other staff because they're just becoming too complex, and the nature of each case is just multifaceted. It's not able to be switched between folks. So tonight we're requesting, here's some pictures. We're requesting an additional outreach work position at a cost of just over $61,000, which is a grade 9, step 1. Adding this additional staff member will allow us to meet the growing demands of the community and allow our current staff members to devote their time to where it's needed most. ARPA funds could potentially be used to fund this position initially. Just wanted to put that on the radar. And with the pandemic going on and on, the assistance needed, our increased calls that are coming in for mental health issues and financial issues, we're only expecting this is going to increase as time goes on. And this brings me to our second substantial budget change tonight. We have found that the ongoing pandemic and its social, economical, and health impacts are increasing and rising in complexity as time goes on. And just a few days ago, AARP put out an article about the rising numbers of anxiety and depression and how that's affecting mental health help hotlines and how those numbers are increasing. So new to our budget this year is a line item that was moved over from the Board of Health budget at the request of the finance team in the Board of Health, which is called the William James Interface Program. This program is a referral service and is open to all as Littleton residents, no matter what age you are. And you can receive individualized referrals to a mental health provider based on your specific needs. So if you're looking for a therapist who specializes in PTSD and you only want a male therapist who accepts mass health insurance, they will do all the legwork to find you that provider. Littleton has had this service for several years, and the usage has grown considerably over the past 2 years. This line item on paper looks as though it doubles our professional services line, but it's essentially cost neutral because it was previously funded under the Board of Health. It's just being switched from BOH over to EHS. The other part of this that I wanted to mention is that the cost of this program based on usage is rising for the next contracted 2 years. So it's rising from $13,000 annually to $16,000 annually, and that's paid 2 years at a time. So this new contract hasn't been signed yet, but we anticipate moving forward with it. And so you won't see this in the packet that you have in front of you. I believe it's marked as $27,000 under professional services, but it will actually be $33,000. Our other budget line items are rising slightly to correspond with actual costs, such as our vehicle repair and maintenance line and our service line, which didn't increase last year. Our postage line is also increasing to include the mailing of our monthly newsletter, The Broadcaster. And this was previously funded through a donor in town who funded it every year for several years, but that person is no longer able to continue doing that. And print media is essential for this population, so I'd like to add this into our budget. And these new expenses are offset by a reduction in the community programs line. And that was done by moving our core ongoing programs, which are many of our fitness programs that we do year round, moving those from the community programs over to our state formula grant, which we get every year, funded through Executive Office of Elder Affairs in the state. Staff salaries are increasing in accordance with steps and COLA as outlined in the bylaws. So just to recap what I'm requesting tonight, number one is the request for an additional outreach worker, and that was about $61,000 annually. The second major change was the William James Interface Program moving from the Board of Health to Elder and Human Services. Number three, wanted to point out that we have a pretty lean budget with very slight increases, mainly increases that reflect the actual cost of services and items, plus staff COLA and steps. Our operating budget is supplemented by grants. Anytime we are able to write a grant or move things over to the state formula grant or request assistance from the Friends of the Littleton Council on Aging, we do that to supplement what we receive from the town. And then I did want to mention that we have a robust senior tax work-off program that gives back to the town. We have about 100 workers who provide over 6,000 hours of work to the town, to various departments, pretty much every department in town hall, and that's a cost savings about $80,000 for all the work that they do. And that sums up my fiscal year 23 budget. Are there any questions?
I guess I'll speak first. Thank you for the presentation. That's I get a lot of your coworkers need to step it up, I think, in the building. That was pretty good. Thank you. I can just speak on behalf of, some of your requests. As a member of the COA, I get to see some of the stuff in action, and some of the work that Amy does with outreach, especially, we have winters like we've had, and those type of things that happen. And just how Steve had mentioned a little bit about services provided in one of our prior presentations. This is one of those, the last thing we want to happen is someone not get served appropriately or something because we don't have the staffing to manage it. So I think very, very important position, the outreach coordinator, and I know you can keep it lean. You guys are busy, and I think it was a great presentation, and thank you for explaining the request in the detail that you did. Anybody else?
Yeah. I just had one question. So Liz, the mental health services is moving over to your budget from Health and Human Services. That's a 2-year cost, you said? It's a 2-year contract, or?
A 2-year, yes.
Okay, all right. So for fiscal 24, that would be, okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Anyone online have a question?
I just have a comment. I think I'm consistently surprised and impressed by how much EHS does. I think the select board had a recent issue that was resolved by them with some pretty significant work. And, I am in favor of giving them the support they need. I think they really do a lot for the town. I want to make sure, as you say, that we have the resources to support our residents. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you. If you don't mind, if I can just add, one of the great things about the EHS team is that all of us, I'm so impressed all the time with how skilled everyone is. And I think you could take me and Amy and Nicole and Sue and swap us around, and we'd be able to do each other's positions and at the drop of a hat. And I'm just always so impressed with them. And Amy is fantastic. She's received so much credit, which she deserves, every nice comment that's thrown her way. But I also want to mention that Nicole has been fantastic as well in that situation that Matthew just mentioned. I called her at home at, 5:30 at night and asked her to come to a house and bring 2 laptops. And, she didn't get home until 7:30 that night, probably. And she was there in the trenches with me and Amy. And, it's a full on team effort every single day, no matter what we're doing. So I just want to make sure everyone gets the due credit there. And I do want to mention that we do have a couple COA board members also listening in right now, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without their support as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, next up. Today's Parks and Recreation.
Right here?
Sure. You
All right.
can.
I guess it's up to Judy where she wants to. Is this perfect? Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Absolutely, no worries. Is this you? Go. A few moments with your pages.
You doing a presentation? You are?
Yeah.
Okay. Good, I can't find.
What?
You don't have a budget this year.
I do, it should be in there. Budget's on 180. 180.
What
The mighty large footprint.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me and let me do my presentation here. So this is going to be a very different type of budget this year as we go forward. So I'm very excited to show this and discuss this with you and let the public know that this is what we're going to do moving forward. So just kind of going through our staffing. So we, after our issues that we've had over COVID, we're back to being at fully staffed, which is 5 full-time positions, and we like to refer to Abby as our 0.63, so our office administration, because she's still working 25 hours in that position. So currently, our organization chart, we still have our director, myself, assistant director Tim, program coordinator focusing on summer camps and sports, program coordinator focusing on teen programs in youth enrichment, and a program coordinator that's focusing on after-school programs, aquatics, and special events, as well as our office administrator. As I had mentioned, the office administrator is still at that 25 hours a week. This is an issue. I bring this up, I think, every budget season, just so that everyone's aware of it. That, having someone that only works the 25 hours a week, technically our office is open to the public for 33 hours a week. So we usually have to juggle a little bit to be able to have our program coordinators, myself, assistant director, our wonderful senior tax workers to help us out through those time frames. So we have budgeted money in there if we're able to bring somebody on for another, like an administrative assistant position that could help the office administrator. So we'll get to that a little bit further here. So this is the difference that we sort of talked about. So we have typically run off of an enterprise fund from about 2016 until now. So we are going to be changing that into a general fund and revolving fund blend. So the discussions that we've had so far with town administration and finance director is that the general fund will cover the salaries of the director and assistant director as the enterprise act, funds that we got to be able to cover some of those stipends for staffing had in the past. It will also cover the benefits, pensions of all of the full-time year-round employees of the departments. Utilities, and that includes the electricity, water, porta potties, trash removal services, and tank pumping for our recreation facilities, specifically down at Longwood Beach. And then there's also additional funds that are going in to support the special events that are, a fair amount of them are at no cost to the public. So there definitely is cost associated with them, but we keep that as many options as we can open to the public as possible. So the amounts that we have up here calculated, it's around 360,000, 361,000 to be able to cover those items for fiscal year 23. The one thing that I would like to have covered, that I would be asking in the discussions that we had with town administration, that was something that was sort of on the table. They, didn't necessarily feel like that should be covered by this, but the office administrator position, we did change that role as of last year. And so the main things that are accomplished in that job description that hadn't been accomplished previously are things like assisting with payroll, the AP packets for invoices and billing, and the cash check and credit card turnover. So a lot of that stuff are things that we do in-house that necessarily wouldn't be covered by somebody in that programming line. So that's just something that I'm bringing up to, I would appreciate if that was a possibility to have that covered. So I'm happy. And then just continuing on with our space needs. I know that we're currently working with trying to figure out some sort of solution with space for our department to be able to move forward. The one thing I did want to mention, as I've done the presentation previously to everyone about our space, we did come up with a really cool floor layout. However, that's not necessarily fiscally possible at this moment. So, the reality for that is we'll work with what we have in our budget to be able to move into that space and make it work with us, so that we can deal with these budgetary needs as we kind of go into developing what that revolving budget is going to be. So I just kind of want to throw that out there as well. All right.
I think, just so I can jump in.
Yeah, if you go back.
And so in some of the move where you're talking about is library vacated space.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you're.
Ideally, that would be, for our future, our very current coming up future. Yes, indeed.
Now, Steve and I, we were actually kicking around the idea of a building, another stabilization type fund that might be able to be used.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's going to be costs associated with moving departments, with just that building or even other buildings as we move things around, and having money set aside to handle some of that might not be a bad idea. But that's something I just want to let you know that I think you're thinking of a cost that could potentially accrue, so that we're thinking about it as well. Something I know, Ed's working hard. He's going to absorb a lot of the costs himself, putting the work in, and that's admirable. But we also need to get ahead of it and know that there's going to be a cost associated, just short of anything that we have to do, that even if it requires bringing something up to ADA compliance when you move into a space.
Right.
So we can, it is on our radar to hopefully bring before the select board and the rest of it.
Okay. The other benefit to talk about this turning into the enterprise fund into the general revolving is that hopefully we'll be able to get to a place now where we're going to develop a reserve fund. That's one of the things I talked about in the past after, concerns that we had during 2020 and, us being able to add more to the community if we would ever end up in, unfortunately, a situation like that again. We've been really successful throughout 21 and moving into 22 as well. But again, I would like to be able to know that we have that reserve that can support our department as we go on. Not necessarily in just those situations where we may potentially have some sort of crisis, but also to be able to help in whether it's facility maintenance, land purchasing, all of that stuff. So that's the ultimate goal of, really wanting to develop that reserve fund. All right, so I'm just bringing this one up because this was something that was in the budget last year. So, we kind of talked about this percentage at last year as well. The town is changing quite a bit. And so one of the things that we requested funds to be transferred from the reserve last year was for a statistically valid survey. So this is something, it's perfect timing. It will come into congruence with the open space and recreation plan. So we do hope to be able to get the information, on what the community is wanting to see. So my fun little statistics, and you can take this with a grain of salt, as Kathy has said, because I've worked with her to get some of these numbers. But essentially, there's been 874 single-family homes and condos that have been sold since 2016. 246 new homes have been built. And then with there being 379 single-family homes, approximately there's about 28% of new residents in Littleton just over the past 5 years, which is pretty mind-blowing, I guess. I can't really think of a better word. So there's been a lot of change, that's happened in our small little town. So, being able to do this statistically valid survey, which, the companies that we would be looking at using are guaranteeing a 98% accuracy rating, we would be able to really dial it down and figure out what those facilities, programs, services are that people are really looking for within the town. So, this is exciting as we move on. It's also a tool that will be able to allow me to have more laser-like budgeting in the future so that we really know that what we're focusing on is something that the community is invested in. So capital requests. The way that I had set this up, because we have capital requests that are going off into the next 10 years. So the first ones that I have on here are simply just to go over the ones that we requested for fiscal year 23. And the other ones, if we choose that we want to just kind of go, through them really quickly or just skip it all together to save you all time, that is at your pleasure. So the major replacement that we're looking for this year is we have a 2005 passenger van. It's 16 years old and has been well loved. It was actually donated from Elder and Human Services many, many years ago. But we rely on our vans for transportation to get our participants from schools to different field trip locations. All over the place. 3 vans are necessary. That's kind of a key number for us because that's where our limit is as far as being cost effective with a plus. Once we get to about 40 participants, then it is a place where we are able to pay for that plus rental for the day. Otherwise, it's not really cost effective to do so. So replacement of that 2005 passenger van would be greatly appreciated. And then the last one that we have for this year is the LED lighting system on Kerber Field. So this one, I'm not going to go too much into it because I do know that capital requests are very limited for this year. I do and have communicated with Light and Water. I know that they do have a grant that is about the same amount. So I'm hoping once they come to an agreement with CPC that that's something we can put in to request those funds. The importance of the LED system at Kerber is we're always playing this game of fields going offline and having to try to find other places so that people can continually, play sports. So one of the, two of the fields at the high school will be going offline to accommodate the town sewer project. That's one of those things that they keeps getting pushed back, so we're not sure exactly when that's going to happen. But if we were able to light a field such as Kerber, we would be able to extend the hours of play. That could help not only us, but the public schools when it comes to athletic needs for fields. Okay. All right. So future capital requests. You guys have them in the book. Is that something that you would like to go over now, or do you want to wait till next year?
I see you're looking, is this more of a 5-year plan?
It's like more of a 10-year plan.
It is.
Yeah.
No, this is something, at least it keeps, this is a good time to do it. It
Yeah.
keeps it on the radar. We're not getting into too many details unless somebody has a question.
Yeah.
So these are things we know are coming up online because it
Yeah.
does allow us,
Right.
Please go ahead.
So these are things that, again, we're hoping that we can be successful with the reserve, but we still may, be able to ask for capital funds for some of the items. But we also have a vehicle that we use a lot for special events and for, servicing some of the parks, taking trash out, all of that kind of stuff. And that is our Ford Ranger, which is 11 years old. She's still doing pretty good, but eventually that's something that we are going to have to look into replacing that truck itself. Resurfacing of the basketball courts at 300 King. Again, they're looking really good. And I think that this is something that we can, hold off for a little while, but the company that did the installation, Vermont Recreation Surfacing and Fencing, recommends that the surfaces should be done every 5 years. So that's something that, I'm going to go out, take some pictures and have some conversations with them. But I think ultimately they still look pretty good. They're in good shape. They've been offline for a little while because of COVID, so that's helped a bit in that situation. The other is our sailing program has just been extremely popular within the community. And, we offered 9 weeks beginner and intermediate last summer, and all the sessions sold out. So this is something that, we would like to be able to grow that program and to be able to move up to a little bit larger size sailboat that still would be appropriate for our lake. Would allow us to have another level to that sailing program. What's really cool about our program is that we are the only U.S. community sailing program in this region outside of the Charles River. So it's a pretty cool honor for Littleton to be able to have. So we'll have some awesome sailing stuff. All right. All right, the big one, right? We've talked about community center before. This is something that, again, we're going to take a look at this with our open space, or sorry, not the open space and recreation plan. It was on the open space and recreation plan and town master plan to look into updating the recreational facilities, but we're also going to take a look at that with our statistically valid survey that's going out. So just to see if, the reality of this is, something that the town is interested in having. So this is something that, we're looking off into the distance as our town grows, and, we need to be able to meet those facilities within our town. Bay Park renovation. So this is probably a more sooner possibility coming up, depending on a few different things that come through. I know the fire station had talked about wanting to donate some funds to be able to get a playground out there that's actually fire truck themed, which would be really fantastic to be able to have that out there. But we're also looking at being able to have a pavilion that could potentially house skate the seasonal ice skating. So there's a lot of things that we would like to fix within that area, also making it ADA and AAB compliant, because there is a pretty heavy slope to that park as it is. So. And then the last couple that we had is designed for a dog park. That's something we've had a lot of people ask for that in the future. So there is definitely a group of citizens that's interested in fundraising for that park. And we also in the past have gotten a $25,000 grant for us to be able to move forward with doing a dog park, but at that time we didn't have additional funds to be able to move forward. But it's very likely to be able to continue to get or apply for that kind of funding to move forward to support a facility like this for the town. And then the last one is new field creation. So more than likely this is, we talked about the parcel A at Cooper Farm Estates being a possibility for development of a new field there. It's also, again, in the 2017 master plan and in the open space and recreation, where it addresses talking about the comprehensive analysis of the facilities, which we did through Gale. And they have definitely said in that report that we need to be able to develop more fields for sports to be able to play here in the town of Bloomington. We definitely overuse the ones that we have, the graph fields, I should say. So that's an important part of being able to be stewards of our fields. So that's what I have for this evening. Just a reminder, the items that we did want to look forward to were being able to at least get a replacement van for our 2005 for the consideration of the office administration salary or wage, hourly wage for the year. And just, we look forward to being able to work with everybody on doing this development of switching over the enterprise to the revolving fund as well as the general fund. So, any questions?
I have one capital question. We had one other thing kind of our capital plan for 23 for the dock replacements at Lumley.
Okay, so that is something that we do have additional funding from we had like a grant, or not a grant, I'm sorry. There was a fund where people had been donating money to be able to fix that.
Okay.
I think we do have funds within the department to be able to move forward to purchase that. Because we would like to be able to replicate it to be like the can docks, which if you've been down to the beach, that was the new one that we purchased a few years ago that we have the sailboats actually moored out of the water on.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, Mr. Chair, certainly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alicia. Thank you for that presentation and especially the information about the increase in population. For Littleton, I found that to be very interesting. So thanks for gathering that information and sharing it. A couple questions on the budget issues portion of your presentation. So what you're asking is that the office admin be part of the revolving fund?
To be part of the general fund.
All right, so,
Yeah.
Okay, and then what about the 3 program coordinators?
So those would be part of the revolving, since that is part of program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Just a few general comments about the capital portion of your presentation as far as new fields. I know you mentioned the Cooper Field.
Yeah.
Which really wasn't sized to what
Yeah.
we were hoping it would be. I know that Park and Rec's owns some property off of Russell Street. Are there any plans to utilize that land as opposed to focusing on the Cooper property?
So if you would be suggesting using that property that's behind the track, is that the one you're talking about?
No, it's right off of Russell Street. It's by Delaney.
The other side of the bridge.
The other side of the bridge?
Oh, yeah. So we have looked at that before. There is a possibility it abuts 495. So that was part of the issue. And then the additional issue was entrance into that space. There currently is broken asphalt gravel entrance, but it's pretty steep. So that's something that, we would have to look into that. When we ultimately did the measuring of that space, we weren't able to get a full-size playing field, but we definitely could use that space for practice sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And the other question regarding the community center pool concept, have you guys looked into any other municipalities that actually have that type of facility that's owned by a municipality as opposed to a private organization?
Yeah, so we are very close with our Massachusetts Parks and Recreation Association. So there's about 400 Parks and Rec departments that are part of this organization. We are part of the Northeast region, and so there's quite a few facilities just within the Northeast region. Lexington is a really great example. They have kind of a mishmash of some of those things together, but yes, there are certain places that, we've had that discussion. The pool, I think, is one of those areas. I know it's a bit of a hot button issue, but the reality is if we are thinking about that in a specific size, right? There are a lot of different swim clubs in the area that would specifically, they're looking for places to be able to rent. So there's only certain places that have specific pool sizes that meet those parameters, and some of them are out in Worcester, and some of them are within Boston. So within this region, to be able to have some of those swim meets, it's not necessarily easily to come by that space. So, I think if we were able to include that in as part of the understanding of the bill, that it would be internally, you're much more likely to make it be cost efficient than it being cost prohibitive.
Right. Right, and I appreciate that. So in the past, and this is going years back, I know the property right across the street here there's now the tire barn and the storage facility. At one point, there was a group of private investors that were looking to create that type of facility right there in Middleton.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and they found that it wasn't financially feasible.
Okay.
So they just decided not to go through with the project, but that was a number of years ago.
Right.
And I know more recently, there were plans to look at sort of like a sports flex type facility off of Foster Street, which is now owned by the Longs. And they too hired a consultant and they found that it wasn't really financially feasible.
Yeah.
And that wasn't too long ago. So I'm just interested to see examples from other communities and what they're offering and how it's working for them.
Absolutely.
From a financial and need perspective. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Almost like a proof of concept.
What's that?
Almost like a proof of concept.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
And 100% on board with the dog park. We'll get there someday.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anyone online have a question? Okay, thank you. I'm intrigued by the pool idea, just let me know.
Yeah.
My mother used to speak to a pool that we had across from McDonald's, I guess.
It's where Captain Toyota was.
Right, yeah, where I
It is,
so
rather.
there is precedent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, that's one of those things, it's probably more of a want, but I think there is value in that.
Absolutely.
If the voters.
It's
want something
future,
like that.
yeah, so getting it out there.
Yeah. So thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lucia.
All right. We are on to some of the town administrators. So that's the Paulie, our town administrator. We'll do this budget request for town administration and town council. Page 55.
Town administrative budget is, increase overall 4.8%, like of step raises and COLAs. And the only really other difference is we reduced in FY '22 the conferences and meetings because of nothing was in person. So we anticipate, we hope, everything will go back in person. We obviously it's not out good with the MMA conference, but we're hoping that that gets back to normal. So we're just looking to restore the funds to the FY '21 level. That's the town administrative budget. Any questions? All right. So town council, it's
89. Page 89.
page 89, correct.
Even though these fees go up.
They did go up, but when you look at this report, you know, it looks like that we have a variance of $90,000 from FY '22 to FY '23. When in fact, what happened was is during FY '21, we had a number of bills that weren't billed on time. So the reason why you see the FY '22 budget of $350, it really was $250, but the increase was just basically the prior year bills that weren't paid on time that, for whatever reason, wasn't sent to us or so forth. So really, if you're looking at prior year and you're comparing it, it's just up slightly by $10,000 to the FY '23 number of $260,000.
Increase.
Yeah, so from what I understood that our town council fees were going up pretty significant. I don't know if that's reflected here yet. It isn't, from what I.
Yeah, she sent a memo out and she was gonna
Is
do
this
that.
number increasing, Sean?
So the 260? Yeah, I mean, that should be,
The hourly went up, I think.
yeah, the hourly went up, but I think we felt like we were in a good spot overall in terms of what we were gonna spend, so, it's something that we can, you know, take another look at, but at the same time, if you look at the historical actuals, we've been, you know, well under the appropriation on that, so, I mean, I feel good with where we're at the 260,
We're
but.
pretty consistent. And although their rate has gone up, or is proposed to go up, it hasn't gone up in 7 years.
Right, no, it's been,
Right.
it's been a while, I guess.
Which is not the standard when it comes to municipal.
Right.
Yeah, Alicia did send an email out after we got the notification that their hourly rate was gonna increase.
It did, yeah.
And I just don't remember what exactly she was gonna propose.
There you go.
Yeah, 354 is right. Oh, sorry, yeah, she proposed 354. With that 6% increase.
We went off the raw number, so. We'll have to just look like that. I don't know if how that equates, but that's something to still look at, because that could be a significant difference.
Yes.
Unless we are sticking with, you know, where we've been conservative on this. We've never, I know there's never been a reserve fund request for this, so we've obviously come in under budget every year. It's, but it's something that I want to make sure that's reflected here. Because it could be a difference of 100,000.
Mr. Chairman, through you, if I can ask Sean, Sean, do you have a qualified financials for 22? We had budgeted 350.
I honestly have to look that up.
That's okay. I'll put you on the spot.
The budget was actually 250. It was transfers in that upped it to 350. And that was due to the prior year bill being.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds like, you know, Sean mentioned keeping it flat, but just to be sure, if that it comes out to 350, if we're not, if we're looking at the increase, so we just have to watch. Thank you, buddy. by Saturday. I don't think we'll have that figured out.
Yep.
Any questions online? Okay. Next, we're moving on to, well, the same, Joe and Anthony on public building fuel and fuel.
Good evening, everyone. So
149, by the way.
So, the changes that are reflected here, most of that is the facilities manager, tax advisors, 25% of the proposed budget. The other increases really have to do with trying to align and estimate potential increases in electric, gas, water, depending on the new library. It's something that for some of the items, we only have 2 or 3 invoices in. Electric and gas are trending a little higher than what was sort of expected. But we need to really do an analysis and look, especially over the next couple months, to see where that trends out. I actually just downloaded some information from the units like right now. We've used for electric approximately, say, 65% of like what was budgeted, but we're lower in other areas. So I think in the end for this year, we may end up being fine, but it's going to have to be something that we watch, especially coming through January and February and looking at those invoices.
Yeah.
And staff and our office, as well as the finance, are almost meeting on a bi-weekly basis as we get new invoices in for facilities so that we can track, make sure that we make any FY22 budget adjustments, but then also plug it back in here. Finance department has been fairly conservative as far as some of these estimates. So I think we'll be fine, but just make it one of those things we need to watch as we go through over the next month.
And then just in time for us to think that solar on those, which is how that's going to affect everything next year.
Yeah.
Building maintenance.
And
Yeah.
one of the other things is that and thank you, Chuck, for raising that. We now are we have and continue to procure services that we currently didn't have contracts for. So, for example, HVAC is a new contract that just started first of the year. We're going to be doing preventative maintenance that in some ways have been bypassed. So, as we get through, especially this year, one of the things that the contractor was tasked with was really identifying all the equipment we have, what replacement schedules are for filters and all those things. That may hit our sort of actuals this year, but I think as we go through and implementing this plan, we'll see longer term cost savings. And we also have a new building, and we don't know what those maintenance costs are going to be. The example is the new HVAC system. Yes, it has a 1-year warranty, but we've got to maintain it. And we got to do the seasonal maintenance to maintain warranty status. So,
You can also say that there's an elevator in that building, there's a rollaway door that's already been, had to have repair people out there, I don't know how many times. So there's things that need to be maintained in that building, aside from the typical HVAC types of things.
yeah, and that's where, identifying these schedules, George does a great job. We're working with PNBC and contractors, Commodore and Vertex, as they close out that project to give us basically a 600-page user manual for that building. I'm not underestimating the number of pages either. It's going to be about 600 pages. But that's all information that we need to know to maintain these buildings. And ultimately, it also just identifies the need for someone to be able to track and really analyze what is the best way to manage the public buildings.
All right. Any questions from the board?
We've had this facilities manager either in the budget, talked about going into the budget, I don't know how long. And in recent years, all the discussion has been at that $100,000 salary. And it's still at the $100,000 salary. Are we shortchanging ourselves keeping it at this? Has the job been graded?
Last time it was done was just before, COVID. Saying it was rated at that point. You know, we can easily take a look and we have some information from some salary data, see if it's still valid. I don't think it's grossly out of whack. But we can take another look and see if that's at least in line with market.
This was, has there been talk with the schools about that position? Well,
Yeah, I mean,
that was
that's
the
a
other
great
question.
question.
You know, I know it's the same to the taxpayer, it's the same. But
Didn't a couple of years ago, you went to town meeting to have a town school partnership in that position?
yeah, I just don't know if it was ever ironed out. Is this, you know, is there a split cost here? We got to, because there is obviously the schools would be potentially the majority of the work of that position. So
When we had in 2020 the budget meeting here, that job description was agreed between the town and the school administration.
okay. But just more to come on how that, might have to rekindle that conversation on what that's going to look like.
You guys take a look at that. Just see if it's accurate.
Yeah. The 50-50, is it a 60-40? When we really look at the work, we want that job to do 70-30 potentially.
It's certainly worthwhile taking a look at classification and then, you know, where it falls in the job descriptions.
Yeah. But that, absolutely, I know that there's been some cycle of that position actually coming on, and even some of the issues we have in town. We kind of put it under one person and be able to work. This is one of those other service providers. It'd be nice to get finally. Anything else?
You just nailed that, say more of a cost avoidance by having that
Yeah.
person in place.
Absolutely.
We can certainly realize some cost avoidance.
And it's a big hire, because, I mean, I don't know how many years ago, probably remember how many years ago, but we had somebody on staff and it was just so wrong.
A lot, many.
Yeah, anyhow. My gray hair shows it.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody online have anything regarding that budget? All right. Fuel. We talked about fuel?
It falls under what we were told to talk about,
Okay. All right.
but it's one of those things that it's what's up a little bit compared to last year, you know, when you look at actual and FY21, you all know why fuel went down. And trying to keep it in line with FY22, we have seen escalating costs for fuel, so it's a small escalation to try to keep up with current costs. And then while we do take advantage of cost savings so that we get, it's cheaper for us than it is for all of us at the pump, it still is increasing on our end as well.
If there's no questions, anybody online, we can move on to the select board. You have to come with it.
Yeah, you gotta go with it. So the select board is really just a level funded budget is. Yeah, page 88, yes.
Thank you. Is anything jumping out at anybody here?
No.
I've got some general comments, Mr. Chairman. They can come after the specific line item if you prefer, but they're as well placed here as anywhere.
I have one small question. Could someone explain the extra $100 in wages this year?
You didn't get it, Matt?
Did you get the 100? Is it an extra 100 for the chair, Chuck?
Yes, sir.
Ooh.
Anyone?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that's the stipend, right? That line item?
Yeah.
So why did it go up by $100?
Is it
Like-
rounding? That's probably, honestly, that's probably something we screwed up on.
Okay.
You guys want to keep the 100? I mean, don't-
Maybe we can just get some pizzas or something, but I just as soon send it back. Okay, thank you.
Put that on the next line.
It's just one fiscally responsible select board. Any other questions on the select board budget?
Yeah, I guess, the only one I had, oh, sorry. No, just saying the total increase was 49, but it was, you know, increase in other expenses of 49 plus $100, but I guess Matt just solved that problem by giving back the $100, total match. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Gary,
Yes, go.
sounds like any detailed questions on this line item have already been addressed, so if you don't mind, I'll jump in. And as good a place as any, it's at the tail end of our presentations. Of course, the February, Saturday, was it February 4th or 3rd?
5.
Yeah, 5, notwithstanding. The select board budget is as good a place as any to point out that we're seeing our budget for the first time tonight, same as you are. And there's been no prior discussion of it. Granted, there's not a lot controversial there, of course, but it's been said before, so I won't beat it to death tonight, but I will, note it again that we really got to get back on the process that we were working on. And as recently as August, we were looking to work on, to kind of make this process work as it should. And with all the budgets we've been presented with, we're looking at prior vetted budgets. We are not seeing what individual departments were actually looking for, nor were we able up till now to inject whatever prioritization select board members individually, collectively, and for that matter, Fincom members who have questions about priorities. We're looking at something that's already a finished product, and it hadn't got any of the input of the elected or appointed officials of the town. We're trying to do that right now, but it's kind of a backwards process. So that's not something we're going to resolve today or this week or this cycle, but we really ought to orient ourselves with the beginning of the fiscal year next year to do that again. The other thing I'd say is this 100-page document is excellent in a lot of things. I'm always happy to see references to Reverend John Eliot and the Praying Indian Towns and all like that. But what it doesn't include, to my satisfaction, is presentation of year-over-year growth collectively in the context. We see it in the various silos of the individual budgets, but for us to know what we're really dealing with in making decisions on a proposal for the town is how many discretionary dollars do we have collectively? What are the various competing costs for those from the various departments? And then we can sit down and, we've heard individually some presentations from many of the departments. We'll hear more on the 5th. Then we can, be with that in hand, we'll be better informed to be able to say, okay, having heard all the proposals, the first, A, B, C, we're going to fund those as requested. D, E, F, maybe not, and then G, H, we, have not been advocated for to the extent that we think they should be, etc. So I think, whenever it happens, I'm not that picky about, but at some point, I think we ought to see, and we've got them in years past, kind of year over year summary sheets that speak to the bottom line dollars, the number of discretionary dollars after you've accounted for contractual obligations, and the OPEB costs, et cetera, et cetera. And then, and then a list of the various new requests over prior year in one place, rather than having to go through, 50 different individual departments. And I apologize if I'm missing something here, but I don't think so. I've gone through the document a couple of times. In any event, it would be helpful to have it all in one place, because that's ultimately the decisions we're going to make in order to present a proposal to the town meeting jointly, I presume, because that's what we usually do. So, and I think also helpful to that end too would be a little more fine-tuned historical perspective as to where we are right now with headcount, where we were 2 or 5 years ago, and where the present budget proposes us to be in a couple of years. And then and that's not hard to do. We can get all that through Treasurer's Office information. We've had that before. And the last point I would say that I think needs to be considered here. We've had proposals, presentations rather, on this before in the fall from Alicia principally, and I know Sean was very much involved with that as well, and Anthony and Joe, of course, too, on our matching up the requests versus our projected revenue stream, sustainability being the bottom line here. We know we're entering in a couple-year phase where, because of 550 King Street, amongst other factors, we're looking at some pressure on the revenue side. And I think, we need to be reminded of that again as we're making decisions on spending, is even if we can find a way to fund all the requests in a given year, the upcoming year specifically, is that the prudent, right thing to do for sustainable purposes when we cannot count on projected revenues going forward? Or maybe another way of phrasing the same thing is, let's make sure that we're comfortable with projections on that, because sustainability of new positions is the bottom, is the ultimate deciding factor, I think, in terms of being able to talk to the town and say, we're being responsible with your money. So anyway, those are the points that I would like to raise.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. I think some of this, it probably stems from continuity. We're looking at 3 finance directors and teams and retirements over 3 years. So that continuity, handing off maybe how we like to see things, or you like to see things, isn't exactly, the information's here, but I'm aware, exactly what you're talking about. We got to a point where we all got to look at a sheet of what this is our revenue, and this is the requests, and we could kind of follow it. And I think we're gonna get there. That'll probably be the final product on Saturday. Hopefully we have something that resembles that. But it's been a unique year, I would say, with the new team, and the information's here. We have to dig for it, for sure.
Gary, I not only agree with you that in the rearview mirror, I accept that as a ongoing principle that we have to get our heads wrapped around, is that turnover is just a reality, and maintaining continuity of information, historical data, so that whoever's coming and going can get up to speed quickly and deal with information, is that's where we need to be. So it's true, we've had 3 finance directors, good ones, in a year, but if that can't become a reason why we can't get our hands around comparative data. We need to find a way to make it all work.
I agree. And as far as looking at ARPA funds, if you want to call it play money over the next 3 years, we can call it whatever we want. It's not a sustainable source of income for the town, and that's a very good point that you bring up. And a few of us have talked to Sean, especially recently, on what this looks like with these budget requests without ARPA. Just take the money off the table, and what does it look like? And the preliminary numbers that I saw, that a few of us looked at, looks like we're fairly comfortable if we right now were to, and this probably won't happen, accept all the requests that we got we would still be in good shape. It would be close.
Yeah.
And Sean,
If you've seen that information, I think we would all benefit from seeing it.
yeah, and this will be presented, you know, believe it or not, a lot of this information came up from our first meeting last week, where I went in and I met with Sean to kind of get my arms around that exact question of what it does look like. And not only that, but I looked at a couple of our surrounding towns and they're going through some of this. And those are the very questions that the public is asking. What did we just do? We just hired 4 firefighters. I'll use Air as an example. Just hired 4 firefighters, and what's that plan look like in 3 years to pay those salaries? Are they putting themselves in a situation? So, I think the preliminary numbers that I saw, I think I'm comfortable, and I think we just got to get those numbers locked in so we can share it and make those decisions on Saturday, and we share that information across the table. And not to say that we fund everything and not to say that we've ever funded everything, but I think it will help us put our minds at
if they exist, I don't know why they're not in here. And if you've got them, I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot, except you're the one who's bringing it to light. If it exists, we should all be looking at that. And then, as I say, in some of the other comparative, items, we all ought to be considering that and having it in a form that we can look at in terms of both the sustainability, proposed expenditure versus, expected revenues, and then also the headcount analysis. But anyway, it sounds like we're on the same track, but we really need to get whatever, that information in a form that we can all see it concisely and make some judgments about it.
We're not late. I think we have time, as far as the calendar goes, I will say. I know we're pushing this February 5th date. We have had a new finance team, and Sean's been kind of doing dual-hatted for a bit now, and that's going to continue. It might continue past the 5th with Alicia still out. So I think maybe we're not finalizing something on that Saturday. Maybe we're going to have a meeting.
Gary, I'm not worried about the calendar so much. I mean, it was a norm. We used to, Steve might remember this. I mean, it used to be a Saturday session when we would hammer out a budget. It was always in the middle of March. And God darn it, if it sometimes wasn't on March 18th, which, if you can do the math, is the day after St. Patrick's Day, which was a brutal time to come in on a Saturday morning and do budget analysis. So I think we've got a good month, 6 weeks to go over. But as I say, now that we're looking at the individual budgets, some of that collective stuff in the new position stuff, just get it disseminated. We should get it disseminated this is more a request through you to staff to get this stuff disseminated so we can have those conversations, not just I don't think we should have an expectation to reach a conclusion on the 5th either. We got a whole month after that to work things out. There's a lot of moving parts still going on. We heard some of that tonight too.
Sure. I think some of the things we were so aggressively conservative on over the last 2 years with COVID is presenting itself in a very positive way this budget cycle, with or without ARPA. So that's the type of thing I want to get captured. I think that's what we need. We'll charge the finance team with capturing. It's just, we're the finance person right now. It's tough right now, but we'll get through it. And I'll make sure we just kind of pushing into next year, we get ahead of it even more, now that we know what we're dealing with. Thank you all for that.
Just to Gary.
I
was going to say,
Sean would like to.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that I can put together a good budget summary sheet that'll show some historical trends and FTE counts along with the discretionary and the revenue projections, because makes for a smoother meeting on a Saturday, and at least all the cards are on the table for that. So, but as we've been talking about, there's still some pending information that we do need on the expense side that, timing wise just hasn't hasn't come in yet, you know, like the insurance, the state aid assessments and so forth. But I think for the Saturday, we should be in a good spot to at least get close, if not done with the initial budget.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
To Paul's point about sustainability, and that's very important, the use of these ARPA funds. And something that we were kicking around the other day, yesterday, is, like Gary said, construct this budget as if those funds didn't exist. And then we bring what we need to bring in to fund those positions. And we'll let that amount that's now a surplus fall to free cash. Goes right into the free cash calculation for next year. That way in 3 years, we built those numbers into the budget. We just don't have that free cash component, which is fine.
Right. Any other commentary on that? We have, the last one here is the finance committee. Reserve fund, and it's not much to look at. It's on page 88, 89. You'll see a slight increase in our reserve fund. But other than that, I think the reserve fund we're still in, if you will, unknown times. I think it's important. We have drawn off this over the last year. And we continue to, obviously with the orchard most recently, correct? I think we pulled from the Fincom reserve, you know, for that project. So I think keeping it healthy is probably the way to go. I know it's almost doubled from way back. If we go back, you know, 3 or 4 years, we really had it low, and I think it's having it at this number is probably more appropriate. I think it's more comforting to know that we can handle these requests that come through the select board to us in a timely manner. So, but are there any questions on this particular item? And there's money in there for an audit as well.
Oh yeah, so
that's something I wanted Sean to speak to anyway.
Yeah, so the audit piece is just that if you guys remember, like last week, the $45,000 for the base audit plus the $15,000 for the single audit for federal funds was shifted to the professional services line in accounting. So that's why it's zeroed out here. What I think we'll plan on doing is to create a new line item within the accounting department for audit. So it's a little bit more flexed out. So you can see what we've spent on consulting for outside services in the past versus what we pay for the audit expense. And one thing on the reserve fund, I think the 295 is definitely more than sufficient and definitely covers the unforeseen expenses that could arise, and also provides for a good buffer. So hopefully we don't have to use it and it can clear to cash, but it's a really healthy reserve amount in there. I think when I was working in Concord and Natick, the number was around 150 to 200,000. So we're really well funded there. So it's a prudent use of those funds.
In 22, are we gonna need to do a single audit?
Yeah.
And we don't have the money for it. There's only 45 in that line.
Yeah, but that's going to be for the prior year. So we're still doing the 45.
The last.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's still done. Is that still done by our auditing firm though, Sean?
Yeah, and there's a certain, I'm not sure if we hit the dollar threshold to trigger the single, but I know now between the school and the town, we definitely have,
Sure we have.
I think it was like 750 or
Yeah, 750.
750, okay, all right.
We just talk to Alicia about that.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
She has a better handle on that than I do on that stuff, so.
Just the conversation taking place is relevant to the, certain monies that we've received from, the government for ARPA and other things that triggered at a certain amount that we've received for an audit. So we now will be, that'll be something that's coming down the road, be audited on that, how we use those funds. Pretty standard. So. Any other discussion about everything that we went over tonight, or anything else? I think Saturday, the 5th, it seems like, initially we used to, before COVID, we all met in this room and we met the 4 major departments came in, and then we discussed it and we ironed out details to what we wanted to fund. And I guess we continue with the hybrid model for Saturday. Is that something that I wanted to put out to the 2 boards? Is that something that you're comfortable with? I mean, we can call it not hybrid, but at the same time, if there's individuals that still are uncomfortable coming here in person, or, someone in your household gets COVID in the next 2 weeks and you've got to stay home, I don't want to bar you from presentation. But then there's a side of it that says, well, if I got strep throat on the 4th, I wouldn't be coming to the budget meetings, and that's why I have 7 board members to vote. So I think it's however you guys want. I think hybrid's probably the way I would be leaning to it, at least for certain in the morning, and then in the afternoon, if we have to continue that in some fashion. I just haven't worked out how that works with the public. Sitting here listening to this rabble of numbers, it isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. So whether that is a recorded or something that's recorded and not live, like we've done in years past, where the first half of the meeting is presented live with our department heads, and then the second half is not. I'd look at some ideas on how we present that on that Saturday. But otherwise, we're just going to go hybrid and call it what we've been doing.
But we don't have to make that decision tonight.
No, we don't. I just want to put it in your heads.
The high school has 0 cases.
Right. We're trending right, but I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable. That's all. So we'll follow that up. We have a little bit of time over the next week to make those determinations. Is there any public input that's out there? I see a 603 number, but no hand raised. Without that, let's move on to any members have anything else they want from the finance committee, or any information. Okay. We're going to vote on approving our meeting minutes that were amended over the last week. So if everybody's comfortable with the minutes, could you make a motion? Someone make a motion for the minutes?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve. January 18th.
Yes, January 18th. Motion's been made. Gary has seconded it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Greg Champney?
Aye.
Yes. Aye as well. Thank you. Unanimous. And I have nothing else. If that is it, I'll look for a motion to
Actually,
adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn, if I could just ask.
Oh, sure.
A motion for the select board to adjourn.
Select board's got a motion to adjourn.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mr. Wavy, second by Mr. Nordhaus. Roll call vote, Mr. Nordhaus.
Aye.
Mr. Wavy.
Aye.
Ms. Napoli.
Aye.
I'm in favor as well, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, now I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I make a motion.
Motion's been made
Seconded.
and been seconded by your son in the background.
He jumps in every once in a while.
Been moved and seconded.
All's in favor?
All those in favor in the room, please signify by saying aye.
Right?
Greg,
Yes.
You're a yes, it is unanimous. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.